Lethbridge, July 26th. We are here live on Jess FM, jessfm.ca, and you can please follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Instagram, we're on JessFM YQL, and also on hashtag SuperDadsYQL. Today on the show, the next half hour, we're going to talk about why we guys suck so much at feelings and emotions. We're going to talk about how to work on being more emotionally aware and accepting, how to express our emotions in healthy ways. Let's do it. For my time here at Family Center, I'm Brad Moser, registered psychologist, family counselor. I've been employed at Family Center for over 11 and a half years. Within my time, I've worked a lot with men, I've worked a lot with women, I've worked a lot with transgender people as well. A lot of the women that I've worked with in individual counseling, couples counseling, I've heard a lot of complaints from women about how the men in their life don't share their emotions. They don't talk about their emotions. They're not vulnerable with them. They don't open up. They're as cold as ice. They just keep everything to themselves. So why do we do this? Why do we suck at emotions? Is it our DNA? Probably not. Is it something we inherit? Not likely. It's something called gender socialization. So what is that? When a girl is born, baby girl, society, family, parents, teachers, siblings, friends, everybody absorbs that child into the world of a girl. They give that girl all the expectations, the beliefs when it comes to what they need to do in order to become a girl, to become a woman. So they're socialized to become a girl and a woman. Same thing with boys. Boys are brought into the world and they get certain colors, they get toys, they get meanings, they get messages, all to create this boy to become a boy and a man. All the expectations are showered onto that person. And part of that for boys is the constant message that emotions are weak, feelings are weak. So to feel emotions is a bad thing. So expressing how you feel is a weakness, right? Feeling is a weakness. Crying is a bad thing. You get messages as boys growing up that boys don't cry, that men are tough, they don't show emotions. And you hear this over and over again growing up from all different areas of your life, and that's who you become. You think, okay, I have to live up to this standard. There's a guy on YouTube, his name is Tony Porter, and he has a good TED Talk. It's called A Call to Men. He's also the author of a book called The Man Box. And what he means by the man box is it's a set of expectations and rules that boys and men are expected to follow in order to be accepted as men. So these are things like you have to be tough, you have to be strong, you have to be a certain way with women and girls, you have to be competitive and dominant, all those sorts of messages. And men and boys they have this in their mind. We have this growing up that we have to fit into this man box. And it's a constrictive kind of a box. And he also describes something called a man card. And the man card it's kind of like a recognition you receive when you live up to the man box, when you follow society's expectations about what it is to be a man and to be manly and all that stuff. Then you earn your man card. You get it. You achieve that man card by living up to those expectations. At the same time, that man card can be taken away from boys, men, if you don't live up to those expectations. So myself, growing up in Medicine Hat in the 80s and 90s, I was very much drawn to this man box, to the man card. It was very essential. If you showed anything that was at all feminine, be it liking poetry, liking chick flicks they're called, or romantic comedies, liking anything that was remotely feminine, you were called gay, which in the 90s was a bad thing. It's a lot more accepted nowadays, but you were called gay, you were called a woman, a bitch, a pussy, all those kind of messages if you fall outside of that man box. So it was very constrictive, it was very much regimented structure. This is what you need to follow in order to be a man. Now, part of that too with emotions is emotions growing up as a boy is definitely, you're not supposed to show them. However, the only emotion that's okay to show and to express is anger, right? And you see that in sports, you see that in, what is it called, Ultimate Fighting Championship, boxing. Aggression on movies is something that's rewarded. The heroes and the good guys, the men in those movies, those shows, the things we see on TV are rewarded because they're being aggressive, they're showing their anger. So the only emotion that's okay to express is anger. The other one that's kind of unspoken but it's cool to show is numbness. So just being emotionally numb and not expressing any kind of emotion is kind of like seen as okay or cool or accepted. So that's a really narrow range of emotions that men are grown up with, that they can express. So the whole idea of emotional awareness, acceptance, expression, being emotionally intelligent, it doesn't happen. It's not taught to boys and girls, boys and men, especially, a generation ago, 2 generations ago, it wasn't taught, and it's not something that they learn or want to learn. Okay? So things have changed recently. We're starting to see some positive movement towards teaching boys that it's okay to show emotion, it's okay to cry, teaching them about emotional awareness. So we're starting to see some trends in the right direction for sure. That's positive, but a lot of us men and dads growing up, dads now, weren't taught that. So it's something that we need to learn now as adults. There are 2 nasty byproducts that men can experience from this kind of being cut off from emotions. And one is disconnection, right? So when you're in a relationship with somebody, friends, a romantic relationship, with anybody, a coworker, when you can share your emotions with that person, it brings a sense of connection with that person, right? You're being vulnerable with that person. You're building trust. You're opening up to them, and they open up to you, and you develop a sense of trust. So in like an intimate relationship, a lot of times, like especially women and some men, they need to feel that emotional connection with that person in order to have a physical and sexual connection with them, right? So there's that, and with friends, with every kind of relationship, there needs to be a bit of emotion sharing for a connection to build, whatever that looks like. But if, as boys and men, we're not taught about emotions, we don't learn about talking about emotions or sharing our feelings. We're shown that it's bad to be vulnerable with how we feel, that you have to be tough and not talk about that stuff. It almost creates a kind of sense of disconnection, where we're not connecting, we're not having the connected relationships that we want to have with friends, with family, with coworkers, with wives, co-parents, all that, with our kids. And in my time as a counselor, I've heard a lot from middle-aged, old age men, that they feel really depressed because of this. They feel like they've left out, that they could have been more connected with the people in their lives, and they feel like it's too late. I remember this one gentleman in particular, near the time that I was starting my practice, talking about how he all his life he felt like he was in this man, like be a man kind of bullshit is what he called it, and he wasn't allowed the opportunity to allow himself to feel anything he wanted to feel in particular. He felt it was very constrained, and he felt like he was disconnected from the people in his lives, and it felt like it was too late to reconnect those relationships because he, by his choice, didn't connect with them as much as he could have. So it's definitely a a byproduct of the lack of emotional connection. The other byproduct is aggression and domestic violence, right? So it's something that we hear a lot of nowadays. So if all that men are taught is okay to express is anger and aggression, then let's say we're going to get into conflicts in our life with our kids, with our spouses, our partners, our co-workers, everybody in our life we're going to get into conflicts with. And we need to learn how to communicate in healthy ways. We need to learn how to resolve conflicts. But if we're not really being open with our emotions with people, and we're only allowed to express anger, then as those conflicts don't go well, we may resort to all that we know, which is anger. And especially if all we know how to deal with that anger is to hit, to punch, to break something, we're definitely going to get into trouble in our most intimate relationships. So that's why there's such a big rise in domestic violence, especially from the men initiating that. And this is something that I have experience with myself. For about a year, I was acting as a domestic violence group facilitator, where it was in a 15 or 16 week group that men went to when they were mandated to take this because they were charged with domestic violence. For the majority of these men, what I found is that they were in this group because the police got involved in a conflict they had with their partner. But for the most of them, they were using a kind of, not really an explosive type of anger where they just got mad and just hit the partner, but it's more of an implosive anger where they kept things to themselves. They didn't really talk to their partner. They just kept everything to themselves. They didn't know what to do. And so they got into a conflict with their partner. The partner got pretty upset with them because they wouldn't open up or talk about what's going on for them. And they would get quite angry, their partner, and kind of demand that they talk, and the man would just keep it to himself, and he would be more and more frustrated. This is a kind of what we call by numbness or stonewalling. The man is emotionally overwhelmed, but he doesn't know how to express it, so he's kind of just keeping it to himself and phasing out. And then, one day the man snaps and hits his partner, slaps, kicks, pushes, or breaks something in the house, and it creates a sense of threat or fear, and then the police get involved, right? So I've seen a lot of that where those only two emotions, anger and numbness, and that's the only way of trying to cope with conflict and emotions that come up. And there is something called toxic masculinity that we hear a lot of nowadays, especially the president of the United States. Masculinity by itself, masculinity is a set of cultural norms that are in society that dictate for men what it takes to be manly, right? So these are things like to be strong, to be winning, to be competitive, to have status, to be admired. Those are good things, right? Those aren't negative messages at all, but these things can be considered toxic when these norms set up men to be at risk of harming themselves or society. So this can happen if for those men, there's some social dominance going on, misogyny, which is prejudice against women, homophobia, transphobia. When those kind of beliefs and attitudes happen, it may lead to the promotion of sexual or of violence and sexual assault. Right? So, and in society, we can unintentionally normalize these kind of messages to boys. For example, when they're wrestling with each other, fighting each other, and it gets a little bit serious, we might just say boys will be boys, those kind of things, and it, in a way, it kind of reinforces their aggression. So there was a pretty controversial commercial that came on online in January. It was a Gillette commercial about toxic masculinity, and there was a lot of controversy about that. I think because maybe a lot of men and maybe some women were offended by the messages. feeling like they're being targeted, or all men are being drawn with the same brush, or that how is Gillette trying to sell razor blades when they're trying to create social change, all that sort of thing. And I think what's important about that ad is I actually liked it. I thought it had a good message, but it's not saying that being a man or being masculine is a bad thing. It's not saying that. It's just saying that when those kind of beliefs go to the extreme, where they may be reinforcing aggression towards others, or sexual violence, all that kind of thing, then that's not healthy. And I believe that my perspective, that as men, we have a responsibility to ourselves and the people in our lives to hold up the mirror to ourselves and to look at how our beliefs, our values, our attitudes, our behaviors, are they reflective of the man that we want to be for us and our families and our kids. So that's just my take on that. So that's pretty much what happens, I think, from my perspective of how, why we suck at emotions as men and why we're not the best at sharing our emotions. So the next part is, what do we do about it? The first part is emotional awareness and acceptance, right? So we all feel emotions, we all feel feelings, and it's about being aware of what they are and being able to accept them as okay, that they're a part of being human, they're part of being a person. And actually emotions are pretty powerful. They can actually give us a lot of useful information about ourselves. So it's better to be aware of them, to accept them, and to not avoid them. I like to look at anger, because I mentioned anger, and I like to look at it as the tip of the iceberg, right? So remember on Titanic when they saw the tip of the iceberg from far away and they said iceberg straight ahead, and they tried to turn the ship as fast as they could, because they know that the tip of the iceberg is small and underneath the water it's very big, right? And they know that big part of the iceberg underneath the water can definitely sink the ship. The same thing with anger. So I'll use an example, and I've used this before actually for probably too many years, because my wife and I don't ever go to the bar anymore with our kids, of course, but let's just say that my wife and I were at a bar and I went to the bathroom or something, went away for a bit, and I came back and she was talking to another guy. So I might act angry and I might talk angry, and I might feel angry and I might be aware that I'm angry, but what are the real feelings, the real vulnerable feelings that are underneath that iceberg? I might be feeling jealous, I might be feeling betrayed, I might be feeling disappointed, I might feel disrespected, I might feel insecure, I might feel vulnerable. There's a lot of disconnected, there's a lot of vulnerable feelings that I'm really feeling, but are being driven by the tip of the iceberg, by the anger, right? And so what I find is important is anger, the tip of the iceberg, good to be aware of that, but most important, to be aware of those more vulnerable feelings. We're going to talk a bit about vulnerability in a second here, but those deeper feelings are the real ones, the ones that are really driving the anger, and those are the ones that we need to kind of be aware of and to deal with. So how do we become aware of our emotions? And this is something we've never really thought about or tried out. And it's something that I like to call body awareness. So if you remember from a previous episode, I talked about the stress of parenting. I talked about how when we get stressed out and angry, our nervous system goes into a red energy, and it goes into a fight or flight response. So our bodies are our best predictor of what's going on emotionally, because our bodies respond very quickly to emotions. So what I like to try is to be aware of your emotions is called body awareness. So one way to do this is if you're just in your own privacy and you're in your own room by yourself, sit on a chair, just kind of close your eyes And just to think for yourself about the last time you felt sad. Okay? And then just kind of just sense how you feel when you're thinking about that sad memory. Sense what you feel in your body. Okay, go throughout your body from the top of your head to the tips of your toes. What sensations do you feel? Do you feel any tightness anywhere? Do you feel positive sensations, negative? Do you feel any neutral sensations? Just feel what it feels like. I know for me that when I'm sad, I feel this kind of slouching forward with my shoulders, with my chest. I just kind of feel like a Quasimodo kind of hunchback look. Think about last time you felt angry and where you felt that in your body. So I know that for me, I feel a tension in my neck, and I know that something's wrong because I got that tension, that tightness in the back of my neck. Think about last time you felt happy. Maybe you had your chest up and you felt confident. What was that like? When you're anxious, what does that feel like? I know that for me, I feel this tension in my stomach. I feel my stomach muscles tightening, and I feel kind of this. And then if it gets worse, it turns into a kind of a knots in my stomach kind of sensation, right? So just be aware of that. And the other thing you can do is in the moment, when you're getting upset, you're getting into a conflict with your partner, you're getting angry, just kind of take a moment, just take a few deep breaths, and just kind of check in with your body. Where am I feeling this right now? Okay. That can really help you be aware of, because everybody's body is different, everybody responds to those emotions differently. And it is really important, I find, that when we are emotional, to focus more on acceptance rather than avoidance. Okay, so when we avoid our feelings, we try not to think about them. Obviously, it seems intuitive, right? If you're not feeling good, don't think about it. It might go away in the short term. You might be able to cope in the short term, but long term, it's not the best strategy. It may come out in other ways that you're unaware of, and you might go into some strategies in the future to try to not feel those feelings, to relieve yourself from those feelings, right? So that's where you might do things like drinking or drugs. You might do some promiscuous behaviors like sex or driving or something to try to relieve yourself from those emotions, whether it's gaming for 6 or 8 hours. So just be aware that if you're doing those things, what emotions are you trying to hide from, right? What are you trying to ignore, to avoid? The other side is acceptance. So knowing that, some feelings can suck. Yeah, it sucks to feel upset. It sucks to feel sad and grief and loss. All of some really bad feelings. But at the same time, we need to be aware of them. We need to feel them in order to know that they're there, and that in order for us to see that they're actually not that bad. Because if we try to avoid them, then we can feel a lot of anxiety in our life because we know that it's there. We're just trying to avoid the pink elephant in the room, and it can just really try to tear us down. On the other hand, if you're accepting of your emotions and you start to work on that, you may notice a sense of relief. You might sense that you're freer to feel other feelings. And this is where vulnerability comes in. So vulnerability might seem like a bad thing, a weakness. It's actually a strength. And there's some really good videos on vulnerability from Brené Brown. So if you want to YouTube TED Talk, The Power of Vulnerability is an awesome video. And also she has a video on Netflix of an hour-long documentary called The Call to Courage. So that's The Power of Vulnerability and The Call to Courage. So what she talks about is when we try to avoid feelings, we try to numb those feelings, or we try to numb the bad feelings, right? So I don't want to feel rejection, I don't want to feel betrayal or hurt, anger, humiliation, embarrassment, and disappointment. I don't want to feel those feelings, so I'm going to numb them, right? I'm not going to think about them. I'm going to do some things that I'm going to overeat, I'm going to drink, I'm going to just try to get away from them. But the problem is when we numb those negative feelings, we numb all feelings, right? So we numb happiness and joy and gratitude, and we're cutting those out of our life as well. right? So the message from Brené Brown on vulnerability is that really vulnerability, like being aware of your feelings, accepting of your feelings, talking about your feelings, is actually a strength. It takes a lot of guts. It takes a lot of courage to do that. It's too easy to not think about them and to avoid them. There's a really good video. This is very short, so it won't take you long to watch it. It's less than a minute, I think. And it's on YouTube. It's called the Man Up Campaign Ad. So that's Man Up Campaign Ad. And it's very powerful. Basically, the message is that when boys are babies and they're crying, we soothe them, we comfort them with their feelings and all that stuff. But as they get older, into toddlers, kids, adults, we tell them to not cry. We tell them to shove it. We tell them to not think about it. We tell them to be tough, to be man, to grow up hair, all that kind of stuff. But why do we do that, right? Because of the whole gender socialization, right? But the message there is that it's actually takes guts, it takes courage, it takes balls to actually show your feelings, to cry, to talk about your feelings, right? That's where the courage is, and it kind of tries to switch up that message that comes from society. So really good video. There's two versions of the video. You can either watch the PG version or you can watch the uncensored version that has a nice F-bomb dropped in there. Now when we're expressing our emotion, there's two ways of doing that, right? So there's the unhealthy way, and that's where we can get into the fight, right? Which is hitting something, yelling, hitting somebody, being outward, hitting somebody basically with our words or our actions. There's a flight, running away, which isn't the best, doesn't really resolve the conflict. And then there's a freeze, which is kind of just going into our numbing out phase. And then there's a combination of the three that you can use as well. Those are unhealthy ways of expressing emotion. The healthy ways of expression, emotional expression, is to first of all know that emotion needs to be moved, right? Emotions usually are relatively temporary, but they do need to be moved. It's energy, so we got to use that energy up. It works different for everybody. Okay, so this could be going for a walk, it could be exercising, it could be drawing, doing art, it could be music, it could even be gaming for some people. It could be talking to a friend, it can be going online and chatting with people, connecting with somebody. It's different for every adult, it's different for every kid as well. Children need to learn how to do this as well. So we need to learn how to move that emotion. So using self-reflection, using some blue energy activities such as a hot bath, whatever works for you, is move that emotion. Then once that intensity of that emotion has wear down, and then when that happens, we're able to think more clearly, because as we get more agitated, as we get more emotionally charged, it's hard to focus, it's hard to concentrate, it's hard to think clearly. So once that's died down, we can think more clearly, and then we can communicate that emotion. We can talk about, say we got into a fight with our partner, we move that emotion, we come back at a certain time, talk about it, and that's when we can use I feel statements to express how we felt or how we feel now. So an I feel statement is to say I feel and then the blank, right? The blank is an emotion word, a feeling word. So you can go on Google, you can Google emotion words. There's thousands of emotion words, there's many. So I feel disappointed, I feel embarrassed, I feel sad when blank. A way that doesn't offend the other person, okay? So it's okay to say you, it's okay to talk about what the other person did, but to do it more in a way that you're owning your side of the story, you're owning your perspective, okay? Because by saying, I feel sad when you weren't listening to me, you didn't care about me, well, maybe you're presuming too much, right? So just focus on your perspective of that. So I'll use a few examples just to try to put this into place. So, okay, so we don't go to the bar anymore. We don't really do a lot of phone, like texting and stuff like that. We actually don't, we have a cell phone, but we share it. It's kind of like a family iPhone kind of idea. I know it's different nowadays, everybody has their own phone, but let's just say that my wife, we each have our own phone, and let's say that I saw her phone one day, I picked it up, and I saw all these messages from other men, okay? So right away I might be aware of that anger, the tip of the iceberg, but underneath that anger, I might feel a lot of different vulnerable emotions. But let's just say that I was going to say to her, I felt that you were being a slut because you were talking to all these other people. I saw all these messages, right? Okay, so first of all, what's wrong with that? First of all, I said I feel that. Okay, as soon as you say, I feel that, it doesn't become an emotion, it becomes a thought. Okay? I want to try to separate those two. An emotion is what we feel. A thought is beliefs, it's what I think. So that's the first problem. The second problem is I called her a name. I used a label, and that's not the best because instead we want to focus on behaviors. We have control over our behaviors. Everybody has control over their behaviors, but we don't have, it's harder to change labels because they really kind of attack a person's character, their identity. Okay, so let's try that again. I feel sad when I went onto your phone and I saw these other messages. Okay, a little bit better, right? Because I had the I feel, I had the emotion word, and then I described the situation, and I don't know. For me, it didn't really sound like it was too much blaming or too much all that kind of offending, right? So that's maybe a better example. Right? So the key there is I feel, the emotion word, when, the situation, trying to describe your perspective of that. So let's put this all together now. So from my perspective, when a guy is feeling emotional, for me, I see it as much more respectable. I see it as this person really knows how to keep their shit together if, when they have that emotion, they're able to own it and they're able to talk about it. Right? So, for example, let's say at a business meeting, somebody in there, a guy in the business meeting is getting pretty upset, and he feels like people are talking about him, they're saying bad things about him. So he expresses that anger by yelling at them, swearing at them, leaving the meeting, having a temper tantrum, meltdown. I think it'd be great, it'd be much better if that person just owns it and says, you know what, I just need to own how I feel. I feel like I'm being picked on right now. Okay, that's all you have to say. You just own that emotion. That's much more respectable for me. That's more of a, yeah, that's awesome. So let's say that another example, there's a dad that's with their 2-year-old, and they're late. The dad has to take the 2-year-old to daycare and then go to work, and the 2-year-old's dragging his ass. He's just not listening to dad, and dad gets upset and yells at the kid, says that he's making him late, maybe shoves the kid around, is pretty rough with him, breaks things, that kind of thing. That's unhealthy expression of emotion. But instead, let's say that the dad goes down to the child's level and says, you know what, I'm feeling pretty angry right now. I really want to be on work on time, but you're really stalling right now. And I know we had a really good time last night, and you really liked spending time with me. I really liked it too. But right now, we need to get to daycare and get to work, and then we'll be able to play later, right? So for me, that's like, wow, that's awesome, good job. Let's say another example. Dad comes home from work, and mom and dad have this new baby. This is their first child. The child's still 6 months. Dad comes home and sees that the house is a mess and looks like the wife hasn't done anything around the house, and yells at the wife and says, what the hell's going on here? What do you do all day? This is nuts. Take care of the house. Okay? Not the best way to express that emotion. Let's try something different. Dad comes home, sees the house is a mess, Goes over to the wife, takes a deep breath to his wife, and says, you know, I just had a really exhausting day at work, and it looks like you had an exhausting day here with our son. You know, I was really looking forward to coming home and really connecting with you. I really wanted to, because I had such a long day, I really wanted to connect with you and our son. So I'm wondering if we can maybe take a few moments and do that right now. Boom, awesome. Good job, Dad. So, see the difference there? There's healthy expression, there's unhealthy expression. We're trying to take the right steps. Now, if you're looking at that and you're saying, wow, that looks really good, or, you know, that looked too easy, it's because it was easy. I had time to think about it. I wasn't emotionally charged. I wasn't in that environment, right? And so I know that in the moment, and I'm definitely not perfect in any way whatsoever. You can ask my wife if you don't believe me. When I get emotionally charged, I know it's really tough, and I'm definitely trying to make progress in the right direction as well. But it's about taking baby steps towards your goal, right? It's about taking baby steps towards being more calm, being more better at emotional regulation, all that kind of stuff, right? So try it out. It takes time. The first few times you do it, it's going to be clumsy. It's not going to feel natural, right? It takes practice. It also takes time for other people as well. When you try something new in a relationship, there's cycles that happen in relationships. We get caught in our comfort zones. So when you try to break that cycle, the other person probably may not respond positively. They may not know how to respond, and they may try to up the ante maybe, and they may try to get back into that conflict, right? And that's just natural. That's what humans do. So it's about you trying to stay consistent with it and trying to see how it might eventually improve. So, big topic, healthy male emotional expression. This could have been 2 or 3 shows, but we do have part 2 and 3 sometime in the future. I'd like to also talk about healthy communication. I also like to talk about empathy. But that's it for today's show. I will be taking a break for August, so you're not going to see me next month, but my next show will be September 6th when I talk about suicide prevention, and that's to get ready for World Suicide Prevention Day on September 10th. After that, I'm going to have quite a bit of nice quality interviews with talking heads. I'm going to have some people here. We're going to be talking about things like the importance of engaging Indigenous dads. We're also going to talk about the importance of supporting separated, divorced, single dads, all that great stuff. So stay tuned. Remember, we're here on live on Jess FM, jessfm.ca. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram. On Instagram, we're available on JessFMYQL and hashtag SuperDadsYQL. Thank you, and have a good rest of your summer.